I want to welcome book lovers, educators, administrators to this second reading on purpose, where we read three new books, discuss the fine points, and talk about classroom use. So welcome new friends, old friends, and book lovers. And I know some of you may have to leave early, so I understand that. If you're not familiar with the Book Vine, I am Amy Vandermyte, president of the Book Vine for Children. We are a women-owned book business, and we've been around for more than 40 years. Our job is to read the 3,000 new board books and picture books that are published and choose the very best for our selections. Now, we do this because children's literature is our passion, and we do the work for teachers and programs because your budgets are too tight to buy books that are not of a high quality. And educators don't have the time to suss out the best books. For those of you who weren't here in December, I kind of recapped how this started. And I wanted to start a forum where we met and talked about books. And I was very fortunate to meet Trevor Newton at NACCE in November in Anaheim. His infectious energy, his interest in books, and his classroom experience was the spark that we needed to try this out. Hello, Trevor.
Hi, Amy. It's so good to see you again this morning. And you know what? Anaheim was wonderful. It was not 16 degrees. It was definitely way warmer than that, but it was really, really nice. But the energy can still be felt through here in these winter months. So thank you. I appreciate the introduction. For those of you who have not met before, my name is Trevor Newton. I'm a preschool teacher. I love teaching. I've been in early childhood for 15 years. I am an ECE within my own room, also a special education site director for my school. And I have 40% of my children are special needs, and the other 6% are typically developing peers. And I love books, right? I love reading to my son. I love reading. My wife and I enjoy reading stories to him as well. And my journey with books started in a kind of a different place. I really wasn't read to as a child very much. So it wasn't until I was almost in like a freshman in college or sophomore in college taking a children's literature course where I got this list of books and it was like, oh my gosh, this is just the most incredible thing ever, right? I remember being in the library, taking out Wild Things for the first time, right? And some other of these books, and it just really just catapulted my love and interest in books, and it has not stopped. And so I see every time we meet with you, Amy, just as an extension of that. And so like I just get ramped up again just with the excitement for sharing books. I also love to present. I love to train early childhood programs. My website is trevortnewton.com. And if you're looking for an early childhood speaker or presenter about children's literature, potentially social emotional learning, big body play, teacher leadership, I would love to help you because I draw on my own experience, but also research-based skills that I've learned throughout my time and also with my peers. So anyways, Amy, we have an incredible selection of books today. Are you ready to get this going?
I am. Let's do it.
And I'm sorry if I'm sparkling on camera. We talked about that earlier. I feel like this shirt is just
Your
getting me
shirt has a
going.
pattern that sort of moves on its own, but we're all okay with that.
Yeah, did not anticipate that, but I'm kind of liking the zazzle.
You and your wife have an interesting way of reading books, and kind of reading books for the first time. Can you talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting you brought up because I'm trained in this, right? I take a book, I flip through it myself, I look at the pages, do a walkthrough like I would present to a child or to a class. My wife and I both enjoy reading to our child, and so he's 8 right now, but we read to a book every single night. So often she will take the book first, and she's a high school Spanish and history teacher. So very logical, very matter of fact type brain, but she enjoys stories. So she'll read a story first without even opening up and just kind of read it straight through. And so I enjoy listening to her read the story first. And then I go back and I'm like, I wonder, I have her preview it because I think if she can get through that book and she can enjoy it and she finds the value in that book, then it's going to be really accessible to a really large number of people. Does that make sense? Where Amy, I can get really niche and I like the little things like the John Clausen's.
Right, right.
Yeah, but so anyways, yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting way of, as a family, looking at books. You have two different perspectives. So I thought that was interesting in what you both bring to the table in terms of she's teaching high school kids and you're teaching young children. And so it's kind of, you have these dialogues, conversations about the content. So I thought that was really useful and interesting.
Absolutely. And so the other piece on that's been an extension the past couple months is my son loves when I do voices. Like he just gets after it. But problem is, part of the reason we're reading the stories to him is to enjoy children's literature, but also to help him fall asleep. So often we're reading these stories and I'm just getting too into it, and he's laughing loud enough to wake up the whole house.
Right,
So I got to
right.
be careful.
Animation is not helping the sleep,
It's
not
not. So
taking him to dreamland. Right,
no, so I have to get those one or two books out early and then end with like a closer type book
right,
where
right,
I'm really calm and we're sleeping and you're
right.
closing your eyes for the last 15 minutes. You're asleep.
Your hypnotic
Oh.
voice.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
All right. Good. I wanted to just touch on that
Thank you
because
for
there's
bringing
so
that
many
up.
ways of looking at children's literature, whether you're looking at a classroom-facing book or a family-facing book. Because frankly, there are so many ways to approach any given subject. We always look at the classroom-facing titles, and that's what
Yeah,
lections are about. All right, we're going to get started here with our
absolutely. Can't
first
wait.
title. Now, we always have a disclaimer. We have the three books we're sharing have been truncated. We're not going to share all the pages, but enough to get an idea of the tone, the language, the messaging, and the illustrations. And the three books we've selected, they have a theme running through them, and I'd like to hear your comments on that theme after we read the books. So our first title is Hornbeam All In, written by Cynthia Rylant and illustrated by Arthur Howard. Now, this is the same team who created the Mr. Putter and Tabby series. And this book has 3 short chapters. The stories are funny and they exhibit great social emotional points, probably for 4s to 6s. I had to pick just one story out of the 3, and that was really difficult on deciding which one. So I think this is a great book for young children to act out the characters. First story, this story that we're going to share is perfect for this time of year. Sleeping at Cuddy's house. Hornbeam, yes,
It's not showing up.
hello. You're not seeing it? You're not seeing the cover of Hornbeam all in?
Right.
I see it.
You guys see it.
And do you see Sleeping at Cuddy's house? Okay. Tracy K, do you see it?
I see it.
I do see it.
Oh,
Yes.
now I see it. I
Okay.
see it now. Sorry about that, everyone.
No, I'm glad it's working. Sleeping at Cuddy's house. Hornbeam loved to sleep. He snored very loudly when he slept. He sounded like a truck. Since Hornbeam lived alone, his snoring was never a problem. But one winter day, Hornbeam's furnace stopped working. He was freezing. So he asked his friend Cuddy if he could spend the night. Cuddy was happy to let Hornbeam spend the night. They made some fudge and played checkers. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that moving checkers with hooves is probably pretty difficult, but they are practiced, I'm sure. Bedtime came, and Cuddy put sheets and blankets on the sleeper sofa for Hornbeam. Hornbeam settled in. The sleeper sofa was so warm, and he could see the snow outside. Hornbeam was as cozy as if he was in his own bed at home. He went right to sleep. Upstairs, Cuddy was also sleeping, but not for long. What is that noise? Thought Cuddy. Is there a truck in my house? He went downstairs. It was not a truck. It was Hornbeam. Cuddy did not want to wake his guest. How could he get Hornbeam to stop snoring? Maybe a hat will work, thought Cuddy. He put a hat on Hornbeam's snout, but a big snore blew the hat right off. Thought Cuddy. So Cuddy tries other things. He tries to plump his pillows. He puts on a little music, but nothing works, so Cuddy gave up. Trying to sleep with a truck downstairs was impossible. So Cuddy decided to stay awake all night. And he makes good use of his time. He writes letters, he scrubs the kitchen floor, and he trims his toenails. By sunrise, Cuddy had put in a full day's work. When Hornbeam woke up, Cuddy gave him a big bowl of oatmeal. Cuddy did not say anything about the snoring. And after Hornbeam left to get his furnace fixed, Cuddy climbed into his nice warm sleeper sofa. He put his head on the plumped pillows. He watched the snow. Cuddy was cozy. He was also a very good friend. So that's one of the stories in the book. The other 2 stories are about giving up something you really want at a picnic, like potato salad, so someone smaller can have something to eat. And the other one is about learning to swim at the suggestion of his good friend, a skunk named Adorabelle. Now, while Hornbeam doesn't dislike swimming, he prefers dry land, but what he loves is the certificate he got from learning how to swim. And I think that can be an on-ramp for children who are learning something they don't love, but that thing is necessary. And so we have some classroom use points for you. And I know that Trevor has some comments after this. But for social emotional learning, this title's about self-regulation, adapt to changes in your expectations. And we can talk about why Cuddy didn't mention the snoring to Hornbeam. It's about self-awareness, how my behavior affects others, how we are kind, how we cultivate being a good friend, because we have to work on that throughout our entire lives. It's about generosity, making room for what others need, and lending a hand when others need help. And I always talk about the benefits and the importance of humor. Humor helps build and develop critical thinking skills. Why is something funny? Why are the illustrations funny? How do they add to that text? And again, as Mem Fox always points out, this builds general knowledge of the world. It talks about making a bed, a sleeper sofa, making someone breakfast. And the other stories do the very same thing. So now let's hear from Trevor on his points, and then I want you to chime in if you find something really special about this title.
Yeah, Amy, thanks for reading that. I really do appreciate it. And what I enjoy about Hornbeam All In are the characters. She has another book, I believe it's Hornbeam Gets It Done, I believe is what it's referred to, the title. So you have Hornbeam, Cuddy, there's a goose named Eureka, and then the skunk named Adorabella. And I like how it chunks up in those three little stories in each book. And so you get to know these characters over time. And that's a fun piece as well, because I love to use characters to help teach themes and teach even social emotional skills within class. It's always nice to pull out that character even during a one-on-one discussion with a child. For example, in this situation, Cuddy is obviously the main character. So when you're having a conversation, you can talk to child like, why do you think Cuddy was a good friend? What made him a good friend? What are some things that he did? Would you do anything differently? And so I think there's some large whole group prompts who can really ask to have a really large discussion. But I think you can draw this down and really pull the characters out one at a time with children. And I think that's pretty valuable here. And I like how the thread is still there. And you get to see them in kind of a different light. And they all have a different flavor of who they are as characters, and which is super enjoyable. And so for me, social emotional learning preschool is obviously the number one thing we do. So anytime we can talk about friendship and what that actually looks like and how it's actually actionable, I think is really important. What games can you play with a friend? What can you do with a friend? What can you do if a friend is bothering you? I think is important. In preschool, we talk a lot about ignoring or giving a suggestion or helping a friend out. And so I think all those threads can be tied off of this book. And then I think about dramatic play, right? Because it's a pretty simple scene, if you will, with Hornbeam in his sleeper sofa with a mask on. I would love to see this in the dramatic play center. Set out a little small cot and put out the pajama dress up clothes and pretend to be asleep. Let the children reenact that story, even as going as far as putting something over their mouth to try to stop the snoring. I think that's a lot of fun. And I think you can see extensions here, depending on the level of your child, where they're either Hornbeam or they're Cuddy, and then they take turns. And then the final thing I want to talk about is for some children, and even older children, it's what do we do to occupy time by yourself? And in this case, he was productive. He found something to do. He got work done instead of saying he's bored, trying to find someone else to entertain him, or even going on the iPad or going on the phone. There's other things that you can do with your own independent time. But I'm excited and curious to hear from all of our friends out there what they thought of Hornbeam All In.
Thank you, Trevor. Great. Anybody want to chime in, talk about Hornbeam, the benefits? Well, one thing, Trevor, that you touched on that I really like is they're fully fleshed out characters. They have a real sort of backstory without having too much information, in the text about them. So it's excellent writing. And
Yes.
so They're not just a kind of a veil over a character. They're rich characters. They're kind to one another. And I think those open-ended questions about how they're kind, why they're kind, that's a good thing. And I love talking about snoring. Animal sounds are so important for children to make, to build those sounds that you need to make, all the different vowel sounds, the combinations. But snoring is a sound too. And who snores? Why do we
Yeah,
snore? When do we snore? We don't snore when we're awake. And that's also something about how we handle delicately. And that's exactly what Cuddy did. He was a good friend. He didn't mention the snoring. And so that kind of grace, I think, is something that children need to see exhibited in their everyday lives. And if it's not in their everyday lives, thank goodness we have a story that exhibits that grace.
exactly. Or you have moms or dads who snore, right?
Right, right, absolutely. Or grandparents.
Grandparents, yep.
Right, right. So I like this title. I think it has so much to offer. And no one has any other comments about Hornbeam. We're gonna transition to our next title then. Actually, no, I'm lying. I'm fibbing. I have three titles that are recommendations with a bit more text or short chapters. And each of these titles deals with friendship and developing trust. And I like these for different reasons. We have Evergreen by Matthew Cordell. It comes to us, it's the viewpoint of a young squirrel, and she has many phobias. But she puts her fears aside to help her granny, her ailing granny. And in the process, she makes friends with other woodland animals, and she realizes she's capable of a lot more than she thought. And it's told with humor, and the illustrations are wonderful. And then we have Henry Like Always, which received a Schneider Family Award. It's told from the point of view of a boy on the autism spectrum. It's very gentle and encouraging. And finally, we have the Snail and Worm series. If you've never read these, you're in for a treat. It's by Tina Kugler, and there is so much humor imbued with kindness. And each book has three very short chapters. So don't miss those titles. They're all really good selections. We're going to move on to Gifts from the Garbage Truck, a true story about the things we don't throw away, written by Andrew Larson and illustrated by Oriel Vidal.
Can't wait.
And so you have a little bit of foreshadowing there. He is taking a look at the skyline of New York City. And there's a preface in the book. It is by Nelson Molina, who is the subject of this title. And he talks about growing up in East Harlem in a largely Puerto Rican neighborhood. And his mother taught him the value of repairing what is broken and also saving anything and everything from the trash that can be used. So we start the book. Nelson Molina collected things. He collected all kinds of things, like the scraps of wood he found on his way to school. Nelson's mom showed him how to use scraps of wood to make birdhouses. If someone can use it, don't throw it away, she liked to say. She was an expert at reusing and recycling. One day, Nelson was checking on his birdhouses when he noticed something in a trash can. It was a toy garbage truck that was missing a wheel. Why would anyone throw this away? Nelson wondered. I know someone who would love it. Nelson cleaned the truck when he got home. He painted it white, just like a New York City garbage truck. Then he found a big button to replace the missing wheel. It looked as good as new. When Nelson grew up, he didn't travel the world like his dad on a great big ship. He became a trash collector. His official title was New York City sanitation worker. He rode around in a great big garbage truck, working on the streets where he used to play. Everything he loved was right there in his own neighborhood. Often, Nelson came across an oddly shaped bag. It clinked and clanked and jingled and jangled. Is there something more than trash in here? Nelson wondered. I knew it, he exclaimed, tearing the bag open. Nelson didn't throw these gifts back into the truck with everything else. He had a better idea. Nelson brought the objects he found back to the sanitation garage. He displayed them in the locker room so everyone could see them. People throw away the most extraordinary things. One day, one of Nelson's bosses wanted the display taken down. It's against the rules, he said. But everyone loves it, said another boss. If more people saw this, maybe they'd think twice about the things they throw away. The display stayed. Piece by piece, year after year, Nelson's collection grew. Some displays were arranged by color, others were arranged by theme, like birds and boats. The displays tell stories about Nelson's neighborhood and the lives of its people. Nelson's extraordinary collection has grown to become a museum. People from around the world come to see it. It's not far from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's an invitation to think differently about the things we throw away. It's Nelson Molina's gift to us all. Now, there's great back matter, but I've heard that the exhibit is no longer up, but I don't think that takes away from the message of the book. In our single-use culture, it's important to remind ourselves that there's another way. And this book really speaks to me, as I personally have found many desks, chairs, tables in the trash. I've pulled them out of dumpsters for use in our warehouse. To reuse and recycle is so important. And to talk about this with young children, I think is essential. So our classroom use points, I love that the family has a diverse background, and the pages that are not included talk about Nelson's father, who was in the Merchant Marine, and he would send his son letters home, and Nelson started collecting because of the stamps on the letters his father would send him. And so he would sort those stamps into different categories, which he called displays. So this started early. It started before he found things in the trash. And it's a story of thrift, hard work, and love. And thrift is necessary for so many people that I think we often forget the value of fixing, repairing, and saving things. And the other thing, it's obvious, it's the importance of community workers and meeting the people who serve the community. And for social emotional learning, Nelson was always thinking of others. He had an awareness of what others needed, what they liked, and what happens when we think of others and let them know we consider them in our daily lives. And another point that speaks to me personally is collecting is a way of looking at the world and responding to what you see. And so I know people they look at the collections that people have and they think, are you a hoarder? Well, sometimes collecting things, different things in the world, if you're a rock collector, if you like to collect fishing lures, those things speak to you. And if you're creative, those things often have a dialogue. They bounce off of one another. So to keep that in mind when you're on a walk with children, collecting leaves, collecting rocks, I think it's important to look around at the things in our everyday lives, appreciate the design, and appreciate those objects. Trevor, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Amy, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Gifts from a Garbage Truck. Every time you read a story, I just get entranced. I would love to just be a child and just listen to you read all the time. But that's the cool part about being a teacher and even doing this is that I get to be, my inner child gets to come out and stay rampant. I just have to make sure the ADD stays under control and we're good to go. All right, but thank you for reading that book. But Gifts from a Garbage Truck, this is actually such a personal story to me because this is what my son and I do. Right after COVID started, that December, we had Christmas. Him and I were on a bike ride, just right around our neighborhood the week after Christmas. And we're on a bike ride because it was warm that time. And we saw a snowman like in pieces next to somebody's garbage just a block or so from our house. And it was like one of those wicker waving snowmans. And he's like, Dad, do you think we could like take that for our house? And I'm like, kind of looking at it and I'm like, I don't know. But then I thought, why not? Why not try to reuse this? Why not try to recycle this? We had nothing better to do. Why not we try to rebuild this? And so I said, hey, let's ride back to the house, get the car really quick. And that's exactly what we did. But what it did was it started a whole display in our entire house. So we would then drive every single Thursday night and be looking at our neighbors, like whatever they put next to their garbage for different Christmas displays. And now we would bring it back to our house. Some were broken, some were cracked, some needed paint, some needed repair. And then we put it in our display and we felt so proud about that. And that has continued over the past couple of years. We actually placed second in our neighborhood Christmas contest the other year, or actually 2 years ago. So that felt really great. But it's all these things that we found. And so that's the value I'm teaching. And I want to teach that to our kids as well, is how can we reuse these things? How can we recycle? Do we have to throw away those scraps of paper? Do we have to throw away that fabric? And so for preschool, I think it's really important to have a good conversation with them about what happens to the garbage the moment you put it in the garbage can. Okay, so in our society, we wash our hands of it, we're done. But what happens next? And I think that's really can be a great discussion point for children. Where does it go? What happens to it? Uh, does that that piece of garbage ever come back around again, right? And then I like to think about our own classroom. What are some things we can reuse? In where I used to work several years ago, we had a very small classroom budget. I'm talking maybe $200 a year. And I even felt bad about using that classroom budget, so I typically didn't. But what I did do was I would look into our little common area about every May when one of the teachers was leaving or getting new things, and they would put their old stuff in the middle of this area, and I would go out and I would scrounge through that and find things. So it's at my core that I want to reuse things for our classroom for our kids, and so I want the kids to be doing that as well. So think about how we can put this into the classroom environment. Is it a loose part center, right? Loose parts referring to having a lot of different type of fabrics. Little connectors could be clothespins, things that are non-permanent, so wouldn't be glue. Could even be big clips. There's fabric in there. Sometimes there's little corks, and then those are kind of always in your center. But then you find that random piece of something. Maybe it's a vase for a lamp, or a lamp shade, or a an old vacuum, and you bring that in there, and it may never actually work as the same function, but how can we use it differently? Maybe that old vacuum becomes a new centerpiece light fixture for our library center, right? And so the kids take pride in that, and they have a personal connection to that piece. So I think that's so much fun. Woodworking as well. I know woodworking's tough in preschool, but anytime we can take an item and rebuild it is just a ton of fun. And then, what are those things that you find at in your neighbor's outside your neighbor's garbage can, at Goodwill, at the Ark, that we can then take and put back into our classroom? So it could be a bicycle tire, right, with the spokes. We take that, we put it in our dramatic play. It could be a steering wheel for a giant ship. I mean, there's the possibilities are endless, but the idea is you take these things, you look at it from a slightly different angle, and the kids, if you just put it out there, they'll find a way to make it work. So it's so much fun, this topic to me, because you never know exactly where it's going to lead to, but it's so much fun and there's so much value in it. And the kids I know feel really good about the things that they're able to reuse. So yeah, that's just a little thought on there.
Well, I love your thoughts about reusing and recycling. I like the story of you and your son building this holiday sort of display over the years. And I'm sure that as he grows up, it will just keep growing. And then in turn, you can probably hand things off to other neighbors that you've rebuilt.
We are absolutely at that point. So then we talk about that generosity and kindness piece. So my son being young, that's difficult right now, but we're close to that where we rebuild something and we put out. So next year, even the year after, here's something we see all the time in our neighborhood is we see artificial Christmas trees in their boxes at the curbs. Strands of lights went out, a couple strands, maybe slightly bent, and they're no good anymore. Our next step is we're going to take those Christmas trees and we're going to first put them in our yard, restring them, and then about a week or so before Christmas, we're going to start donating those out to different classrooms, different shelters. And we're going to put messages out. People, if you need these trees, come take them. Just simply unplug it, take it, no big deal. Because we want everyone to have that joy. It just feels good to have a tree that you can then put something underneath. And so we want to, just a little thing.
Give back, right. So does anybody have any thoughts on repurposing, recycling, loose parts play like Trevor was bringing up, or any traditions you have in your own classrooms about this?
One of the things I thought of while you guys were talking, our class loves to do class books. And so I thought in my dreamland here, like if we just sent home a piece of paper that said gifts from Miss Becky's garbage truck or something, and then it had a picture of a garbage truck, and then each family would find something that they recycled or a loose part or something that they are recycling, take a picture of it with a little journal on it, send it back, and then we put it together in a classroom book. And then the kids can see what every other kid did with their recycling. It gives the kids who are shy a chance to share what they did in their home because it's safe. It's something they're familiar with. It's something that there's a picture of with their mom or their dad or their grandparents. And then they can just go back and look at those things throughout a couple months in the classroom.
Becky, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love that for involvement, and you could even put it on a board so you can share over time and add to. Fantastic. I love that. Anybody else want to springboard off of Becky's idea?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Amy. I just got excited.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think there's extension for other classrooms in your building as well. Because I mean, so often like our culture within schools is every 6 or 7 years things get recycled, or not even recycled, but new desks come in, new chairs come in, new this and that, new books, new curriculum. So you're constantly seeing this pile going to the warehouse or wherever it might be.
Right.
Yeah. So I would love to see how those items were recycled. And I don't
Becky,
know.
anything else?
No, I'm good. I just forgot to turn off my mic. Sorry.
No, I just wondered. But the other point that I always want to talk about with people is the idea of away. There is no away. We don't throw things away, they go somewhere. And so I know it's sort of an uphill battle in terms of just the fast food industry. How much plastic and paper never gets recycled? With grocery shopping, how much of the packaging that is present? And if we learn from a young age to kind of weigh the amount of packaging on the products we're buying, we become better consumers. We try to select products with less packaging, less plastic. Enough out of me on my recycling tirade. We're going to go to the next book. Thank you very much, Becky, for your input. And thank you, Trevor. We're going to talk about again, I keep forgetting that I have these suggestions. So a title that's been around for a long time. These are corollary topics to gifts from the garbage truck. We have compost stew. It is a great alphabetical recipe to make compost. Wonderful back matter, fantastic illustrations by Ashley Wolf. And then we have Tidy by Emily Gravett. It's a book that resonates with me about preserving nature and that nature isn't tidy for a reason. It's about a badger who likes things very neat. And then finally, we have Trashy Town. It's truly a classic. You will fall in love with Mr. Gilly, the sanitation worker, and his rats if you don't know this book. It is repetitive in the way that a book for young children should be. And the illustrations by Dan Yaccarino are bold. It is a wonderful book, and first it came out in hardcover, I think, in 2015, and now it's available in a board book. But these are 3 titles that are not to be missed. And we have One Small Spark, a Tikkun Olam story written by Ruth Shapiro and illustrated by Victoria Tentler Krylov. Now look at the tone of this illustration. It's pretty gray, it's pretty dismal, the color. And it starts out, when something is broken or someone needs help, you have a choice, an opportunity to repair the world. Maybe you're small, but the problem feels big. Repairing the world takes understanding. It takes imagination. It takes practice. You know, your action today changes everything tomorrow. And then the world will be different. Imagine everyone gathering sparks, opening their hearts, and repairing our world together. So, I just want to bring up a point here about the way that it starts out. It starts out really gray, and we can take a look at all of the things that are happening in these illustrations. And the characters, too. So the little girl's looking at a broken swing set. And you can see it's set in an urban environment, and there aren't a ton of books that are set in urban environments. So I think that's really important. And you see people coming and going, traffic, a classroom situation. You have people meeting on the playground. And what I really like is that this shows differing abilities. It shows diversity depiction in terms of skin tones. And it's a book about fixing up the world. And so in terms of social emotional learning, small steps are manageable and they make a difference. And the takeaway points for use in a classroom, it's helping each other, showing kindness and cooperation, and community. In terms of anti-bias curriculum, This is encouraging us to be an advocate for positive change. And for the illustrations, I think a picture walk through this book first and have children talk about what they see and having a dialogue about the different ways people are helping each other and the community. You know, there's so many books that don't touch on the fact of different ages. And I really like that this has a variety of ages of people interacting with each other in the neighborhood, in this urban environment. Trevor, what would you like to bring up about this book?
So, like, I love this book. You know, One Small Spark, it's a kind of Olam story. And I really like this just from the kindness message, if I'm being totally honest. When you and I started talking about this story, you brought up a phrase that I think is so valuable for children and adults to hear. And it was, kindness is the result of seeing something and taking action. And so thank you for sharing that with me even just a few days ago. That's just taking that and just growing from that. So in this story, we see that the little girl sees the broken swing, right? So she sees that and she's like, what can we do to fix that? And she took action. I think so often we get stuck with, for children and even adults, on the theory of kindness. What is kindness? We can point it out, we know about it, but we're not always using kindness. So whereas kindness can feel vague, something like you said, where it's seeing something and taking action, makes it really, really valuable. Just the other day, I was walking to my school and I saw someone who needed a little bit of help. And I thought to myself, I see something, I'm going to take action. So I walked over, introduced myself as a teacher, and asked if they needed help getting the things into their car. It's that simple, right? And those are the little lessons that we can then take at a child level and say, your friend, I see that you saw your friend needs help, maybe picking up the goldfish they dropped. You went over, you helped scoop up the goldfish that weren't yours, but to help your friend. You took action. That's kindness, right? And in preschool, we are kind. I know part of our social contract, actually our whole social contract, we do three things. In preschool, we are safe. Preschool, we are kind. And preschool, we make thumbs up choices. And that's our guiding principle for my entire class. And then we talk about what each one of those things are. And so for this story is just a great example to illustrate what kindness looks like, not just what it is in theory.
What it is, yeah. Right. You know, I think there are a lot of adults who need to learn I've never seen it put that way, but I think that's pretty powerful. One thing I wanted to mention about this, the message Tikkun Olam, it comes from the Talmud. It's over 2,000 years old, and it translates to repairing the world. And so one thing that I really like is repairing the world takes practice. Some things you don't know. As a child, you can only make a certain number of enact kindness in so many ways, really to be safe. Within your classroom, there's certainly many opportunities, but outside the classroom, you know, you have your family, but outside of your home, until you get older. So it's really building on experience and letting children solve those problems as they kind of develop.
You're sparking something. What I like how you said, let the children solve the problem. So often we're really quick as adults to jump in and scoop up and fix things and then move the child along the way. It's so critical that we let the children do the heavy lifting of kindness and problem solving. Asking things like, hey, you look upset. You know, in our preschool, we help others. We are kind. How do you think you could help your friend, or a friend could help you fix this? And then talk them through that, and then watch them and even scaffold and guide them for them to do the cleaning, the fixing, the sharing, whatever it might be. But let the children do that as opposed to us coming in and quickly fixing it. Often we do that because it's easier, it's quicker, right? And we can move on with the other things we have to do in our day curriculum wise. But if we spend just a few extra minutes talking about kindness and letting the kids learn how to be independent and take care of themselves, then it's going to pay dividends for not only your classroom later in the year, but also them as people, because they have the power to take action and they have the strength.
The development of character, right? Right. Does anybody have anything they want to bring up about this title or the subject?
I have a thought about classroom activities. I'm curious to bounce it off. So thinking about this story, but then also with gifts from the garbage truck. I think there's opportunities here for a large class project where it's an improvement type project. It's a garden or a section of the classroom to spruce up, the entryway. It could even be a mural. Each kid puts their handprint up, Some of the artwork in here is just really super nice. And I wonder how we can use those colors in your classroom to design something that children can feel proud of. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts?
that's a great point. Anybody have any feedback on that?
Something that we have done for many years, very similar to what you were talking about, Trevor, is we show kindness to Miss Stacy, who cleans our rooms at the end of the day. We make a mural with our handprints and we just say thank you. And so we talk about what are the things that she does in our classroom? How does she show kindness to us? So then we need to show kindness to her by telling her thank you. Yeah, and so we do something like that usually around Valentine's Day. And this would be a great book to use around that when we kind of focus a whole week on kindness and love and how do we show that to other people.
I love that.
Yeah, very good.
And as I look over Victoria's shoulder, you have a beautiful mural or an artwork behind you that's just so colorful. Now, truthfully, my screen is about this big, so I have no idea what it actually is, but it's vibrant. It reminds me of something that kids and children can design and build together that maybe becomes a display piece for a Miss Stacy or someone in your classroom that they can feel so proud of, a gift, if you will, to show appreciation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I was thinking about how, a lot of kindness comes down to being able to communicate, and being able to work through whatever you're going through in a day. So, if a child is having an issue, unless everyone is kind of tuned in, you don't know what that issue is. And sometimes, prompting another child to ask how they're doing. You seem down. Is there something I can do for you? And like, Trevor mentioned that quote, it is kindness is the absence of indifference. And so if we make ourselves aware to the facial expressions, the body language of the people around us, and we communicate with them, and we can figure out how to make their day better or how to soothe them, or if
Mm.
they, it's very simple, they have, they're not feeling well, we can communicate that to the teacher. So it's really about communicating, noticing things, and taking action. And I think you could develop that into, a number of steps that is easy to follow. So, while this book has roots in Judaism, it's a universal message of how can we help one another? How can we help the world?
I love
Any other,
that. So
any,
a relationship with yourself, the community,
yeah.
your peers. Absolutely.
Any other comments? All right, I have 3 books as suggestions, great titles. Be a Bridge by Irene Latham and Charles Waters, illustrated by Nabila Adani. So this takes place in a classroom, and it encourages children to show respect for everyone. And of course, our differences are much smaller than our similarities. It is an amazing way of diversity depiction. There's a child in a wheelchair, there's a child with a hijab, different modes of dress. And then kind, if we talk about how to be kind to other living things, about the importance of being kind to insects and animals, we have a responsibility to look out for those creatures in our environments and our neighborhoods, and to be mindful of ecosystems. It's a great nonfiction title with lots of animal facts as well. And then Try a Little Kindness by Henry Cole. Henry Cole, How I Love Him. Each spread features a different way to be a good person, like
Mm.
using proper manners, telling someone they're special, or sharing a treat. The text is accompanied by vignettes, illustrations that demonstrate different ways of being kind to one another. So 3 solid titles there if you're looking for something else. Now, I wondered if anybody wanted to tie those titles together or they could see a theme running through all 3 of them. If you saw what I saw. Anybody?
Yeah.
Well, Trevor, what'd you think of all 3? What's
Oh
the
my gosh.
thread that runs through all of them?
So you know what? There is a thread. I think that the simple word is kindness. I think that's a simple thread. And as we approach Valentine's, often Valentine's you throw the word love as you get older, but it's really about friendship and kindness. And it's a day to highlight enjoying people who are around you. But I think these 3 stories can be applied in the weeks leading up to that. because you have Hornbeam who cares about his friend. He knows his friend is tired. He brings him in. He says, I'll take care of you. Gifts from a garbage truck. Nelson does a really nice job of taking care of his environment, taking care of his community, finding new life in those things. And then one small spark, they find something, they see something, then they take action. And it's just this nice stream of kindness, how it applies to yourself, how it applies to people near you, but also your entire community and that relationship and the connection you have with everything around you. So I love it. This is great. This is great.
Yeah, I think that they dovetail nicely, and there's different ways of talking about how to be kind to yourself, the environment, friends, and they're not in didactic ways. They're ways you could open up lots of open-ended questions and dialogue with children, but also there's classroom extension activities in ways you can in each book. Yeah, I think
I see them all as some could be really good core part of your core curriculum, but I think some of these could be really good supplemental books. Like if you're noticing a theme coming up, or you're noticing some friends throwing stuff away right away, or not taking care of their things, or friends that are a little harsh to others, I think you can grab any one of these books and you can pull them aside and have a one-on-one story, or maybe it's a small group story, or even a class story during like a second circle. And you can pull in this book, and then it gives you a perfect lead into a lot of different discussions around the topic of kindness and friendship and taking care of the world around you.
yeah, I wanted to point out that One Small Spark does have other pages that show ways to clean up the neighborhood, where to repair things. So there are more examples in the illustrations of how to help out and care for our world.
I think let's see,
Oh,
this might be it. Is that because they're all kind of working together.
they are working together, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi.
So I really appreciate everyone being here. Do you have any questions? Do you want to bring anything up, talk about anything?
Yeah, how might you apply this in your own environment?
People are thinking, I can tell.
When is our next Reading on Purpose session? Do we have a date?
We do. Our next session is Sunday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. And we have a 20% discount on the book package that we just discussed. And you can use the code ROPJAN, ROPJAN at bookvine.com for that book package. I encourage you to tell your friends about our webinar. The more the merrier. I so appreciate everyone who came today, and hopefully you'll keep showing up, contributing. I thank everyone for their contributions. Victoria, I don't know what's behind you, but it's a beautifully vibrant piece of artwork.
It actually was commissioned from our niece. It was her senior project. She was an art major at St. Mary's.
No way.
It's
Yeah,
ceramic.
so it's an upcycle. We bought the we bought the surfboard at a surf shop in Florida that was selling old surfboards, and we had her paint on it for us.
That's incredible. I love that. I knew it. I knew there was something there.
Great story behind it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's so wonderful.
Victoria,
So-
where are you from?
Yeah.
Fort Wayne. I'm actually Becky Hansen's friend and coworker.
Oh,
excellent.
fantastic.
We
Thank you
work
for joining
together.
us today. Thank you so much.
Maybe we'll see you at the Indiana Early Childhood Conference.
Yeah.
You might.
That would be pretty cool. So yeah. Oh, ROPJAN is the discount to get these books on book. Let's see, the Book Fine for Children. February 23rd.
Bookvine.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 23rd, we have 3 great new books lined up for you, and I so appreciate you being here. I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday with this great book talk to start it off.
Absolutely. Can't wait till the next one. That's gonna be awesome, Amy.